Welcome to K-Drama Cuts, where we discuss K-dramas in 15 minutes or less. This video will feature a crime heist drama called Money Heist, Korea, Joint Economic Area. Watch the video and enjoy. In 2025, North and South Korea are on the cusp of reunification. The border was opened, and the joint security area became a joint economic area. Many North Koreans migrated to the South to fulfill their so-called Korean dream. But due to capitalism, that dream was not as promising as they imagined. Like this female soldier who became a criminal on the run, robbing and killing loan sharks who extorted Northerners and poor Southerners. After a year, her partner died, and the police went after her. She was about to kill herself when a man who introduced himself as the professor recruited her in a 4 trillion won money heist. The professor gathered the soldier and his other recruits in their first meeting. Instead of using their real names, they chose city names as their code names. The female soldier was named Tokyo. She is joined by Rio, a hacker and former medical student, Denver, a former street fighter, Moscow, Denver's father who used to be a miner, Nairobi, a con artist, Helsinki and Oslo, former members of a Chinese gang, and Berlin, the most wanted man in North Korea. The professor revealed his plan to rob the unified Korea Mint, where the shared currency was being printed. 5 months later, the group began the operation. Tokyo and Nairobi disguised as visitors to the mint. The rest hijacked an official truck and hacked their way into the mint. Interestingly enough, a class held a field trip, and among the students was the US ambassador's daughter, Anne. Once inside the mint, the group announced their robbery and closed down the establishment. They gathered and blindfolded everyone at the atrium. They ordered the hostages to surrender all their electronic devices and access cards. Moscow, Denver, and Rio opened the safe containing a stacked pile of cash. They intentionally alerted the police about their armed robbery. An important part of the professor's plan was not to hurt or kill anyone, but an actual shootout took place where Rio was shot. They retreated back inside as per their original plan, and thankfully, Rio was fine. Authorities from both Koreas formed a task force led by Moo-yuk, a former special agent from North Korea, and Woo-jin, a South Korean crisis negotiator. The professor was watching and giving instructions from outside. He used a distorted voice to negotiate with Woo-jin. He fed her false intel, which Moo-yuk argued may be slipped out information, so he intended to do a raid. Opposed to the decision, Woo-jin was told to leave. She went to a cafe not far owned by Sun-ho, a guy she was seeing who was actually the professor. The professor warned his team with every information he had picked up. The robbers had the hostages dressed the same and stationed them at every entry point. The task force also learned one crucial hostage, Anne, which ultimately made them retreat. The robbers then started their real mission, to print untraceable legal tender. They designated hostages to print money and dig a tunnel. The mint director, Young-min, conspired with some other hostages to contact the police through a smartwatch kept in his office. They distracted their guards, and Young-min headed upstairs. He was, however, caught by Tokyo and interrogated by Berlin, to which he got away with an alibi. However, Berlin didn't take this lightly, so he set a new rule, dividing the hostages into North and South Koreans. If a hostage from one group made a mistake, a hostage from the other would be punished. On the other hand, the task force was hoping to detect any signal from the mint after turning off signals in the perimeter. Young-min appealed to his mistress, Mi-sun, to get his smartwatch. After Young-min reasoned that Mi-sun was pregnant, the kind and naive Denver took her to the same room as Anne, who was separated from the rest as she was an American. With Anne's help, Mi-sun was able to retrieve the watch. She was able to make only quick contact as Denver walked in. After detecting a brief signal, the task force prepared to hack their way in once they got contacted again. Caring for the pregnant Mi-sun, Denver was enraged to learn that Young-min was denying her pregnancy. Young-min got the watch, but he couldn't contact the police as Denver was closely watching him. The professor became anxious after talking with Woo-jin, so he invited her to a snack, and this is where he discovered about the smartwatch. She suspected him of eavesdropping, but he justified it by confessing his love for her. After Woo-jin left, the professor informed the robbers of the information. Berlin gathered the hostages for a scanning. Young-min got hold of the police, who now has a visual and hearing of the situation. The robbers found the smartwatch that Young-min passed to Mi-sun earlier. Berlin got rid of the watch and ordered Mi-sun's execution, which Denver objected to. He reminded Berlin of the professor's rules but was called to do the execution instead. Soon, the atrium heard 2 shots. Berlin checked and was satisfied. He ordered to dispose of her body and warned everyone not to tell the professor. The professor asked about the recent disturbances, which Berlin argued were minor disagreements. Woo-jin's daughter was taken by her ex-husband. The professor took this chance to barge into the secured facility to learn something, even if it meant a possible end to his relationship with Woo-jin. he discovered that the police had identified Rio in Nairobi. The hostages ganged up against Young-min for abandoning Mi-sun after being the one responsible. On the other hand, Tokyo learned that Mi-sun was alive and was worried about Berlin finding out. Denver couldn't kill her, so she insisted on being shot just for show. Denver kept her in one of the Mint's vaults and visited her often to entertain her needs. Moscow was unaware of everything as he was busy digging their actual escape tunnel. Berlin noticed Denver and Tokyo acting up, so he instructed Helsinki and Oslo to spy on them. Tokyo and Denver retaliated and argued with him. The professor joined in, and he discovered that a hostage was killed. Tokyo stressed that Berlin was going against the plan. Together, they held a poll, and the majority wanted Berlin overthrown. However, Rio and Nairobi changed votes as Berlin revealed that the authorities had identified them. Moscow arrived and learned that Denver had executed a hostage. He was distraught about what he had learned about his son. He recklessly opened the Mint's front doors to attempt to surrender and take the fall for Mi-sun's murder. Everyone was alarmed, and Denver immediately followed him. Woo-jin ordered the police force to surround who she guessed were suspects. Denver revealed to his hysterical father that Mi-sun was alive. Berlin sent out a team of robbers and hostages to escort the two back in. However, Young-min attempted to be released, threatening Tokyo. The group put their guns down and got on their knees. The overwhelmed Woo-jin gave the order to shoot the Mint director, mistaking him for the captor. The group brought Young-min and went back inside. While the robbers were trying to stop the bleeding, the professor agreed to Woo-jin's offer to send medics to save the director's life. The police force took this opportunity to execute a feint operation. Captain Moo-yuk joined the medics team and wore camera glasses. Moscow and Rio witnessed the alive Mi-sun, who also required immediate surgery. When Mi-sun learned that Young-min was shot, she asked for her letter to be given, but Denver didn't as he realized Young-min didn't care for her. They started the surgery, and a task force infiltrated the building. Denver secretly swiped out some surgical tools for Mi-sun. The professor recognized Moo-yuk and noticed his different glasses, sensing a feint operation. Finally, the surgery was done with success. The robbers and the hostages changed their masks in response to infiltrators, possibly in disguise. The startled police force immediately aborted the mission and evacuated the building. Moo-yuk left the building without knowing that the robbers had bugged his phone. The suspicious Berlin confronted Rio about Mi-sun. He headed to the vault and argued with Denver. A standoff between the two groups ensued until Nairobi, who knew about Mi-sun through her letter, showed up and turned the tables. Rio, who ironically was hemophobic, performed Mi-sun's successful surgery. He confessed his feelings to Tokyo while Mi-sun was growing closer to Denver. Tokyo informed the professor that Mi-sun was alive, which delighted the professor. He appointed Tokyo to be the newly in charge. Berlin was locked in a room unarmed. The robbers revealed Mi-sun to the hostages, who cheered in happiness. The hostages were relocated to a much more comfortable room, now divided into men and women, except the injured. The robbers were gaining the hostages' trust while the police had lost the public's trust. The gloomy Woo-jin went to the professor to apologize for their last encounter. Still clueless that he was the one leading on the heist, they hooked up. Moo-yuk and his team had news on the soldier from the feint operation who stayed behind. The soldier has joined the hostages. After informing the higher-ups, Moo-yuk was surprised to learn that Woo-jin was suspected of having connections with the robbers. He was given the task with the soldier in secret. Woo-jin negotiated to deliver food supply in exchange for the hostages' safety, to which the professor agreed. After naming a breakfast not generally served at the Mint, Woo-jin realized that the professor wasn't inside. She thought of tracking down the car from the surveillance footage. As soon as the professor heard this, both camps were racing to the scrapyard. The professor, who arrived first, was about to burn the car when sirens wailed in the distance. When the police had reached him, he drove off and was in a car chase, and helped disguise the soldier. They went to Mi-sun to ask about the professor, but she knew little. Young-min, paranoid that Mi-sun was with Denver, incidentally saw the soldier. He suggested interrogating Denver. From this, they had deducted that Tokyo was the one behind the professor's mask. The soldier set off the alarm, signaling the professor's execution. Berlin, who was also having a seizure, was released. The robbers attended to the emergency situation. Woo-jin shared with Moo-yuk that they have the professor surrounded. Moo-yuk tried to contact the soldier until gunshots were heard. The professor was able to escape, leaving the car in ruins. Moo-yuk reconciled with Woo-jin after having suspicions about her, and promised to always work together. Now that the hostages' families were worried about the gunshots, the professor offered to send a video to assure the public that no one was killed. However, Woo-jin insisted on going in herself with a camera to broadcast live. The robbers gathered the hostages to brief them about this, and surprisingly, Berlin revealed his real name and identity. Now that he's got nothing to lose, he expected everyone in their best behavior, and shared with the deputy director and Young-min her plan to inform the police that the robbers were printing money, and the soldier was shot. She was confident to take the fall as she has a reputation. The professor was among the audience at the public screening. As expected, Berlin revealed his face during the broadcast. The hostages were checked one by one. They shared that the robbers had been nice to them and denied their knowledge of the soldier shot. It was Anne's turn, and Tokyo caught her passing a note to Woo-jin. They confronted her and weren't convinced she had planned it alone. Woo-jin requested to see the hostages all at once. She confirmed the hostages on a list that strategically included the cop. Berlin argued that the man wasn't a hostage but an agent they sent in. Woo-jin then demanded to set the students free as there was no reason to negotiate with them. To prove Woo-jin wrong, the robbers brought in the cop, who was miraculously alive. Berlin revealed the police's real plan, pointing out that they were willing to use the hostages as human shields. The public was in an uproar. The robbers celebrated as they have won over the police. Moscow delivered the news that he had finished digging their tunnel. Denver bid Mi-sun an early farewell, where they made love. The police were in a dilemma as they lost the public's trust. If ever he was fired, Moo-yuk planned on tracking down the professor himself, but Woo-jin argued that they must stick together. Moo-yuk, suspicious of Sun-ho, especially when he once barged into their tent, questioned Woo-jin about him. The offended Woo-jin defended the professor. Later, she invited the professor for a drink, and the professor realized that he had fallen for her. On their way home, Woo-jin found a piece of a band note and had left, so she excused herself and rushed off. Outside the cafe, the professor came face to face with Moo-yuk. To help this channel grow, please like this video and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be updated for the next upload. See you. Stay safe.